I can't tell you how many emails I get from churches who totally waste this really simple, easy opportunity to improve the performance of every email they send. Hey there, it's Matthew Warner, and this is the Finding Uno Show. Welcome to the Finding Uno Show. Who's Uno? Oh, you know Uno. He's that one lost sheep the shepherd leaves the 99 to go after, and we are here to help you find him. I'm your host, Matthew Warner, founder of Flocknote.com, joined by my co-host, Matthew Sewell. How's it going, Matt?
Hey, good, Matt. Always nice up in the sunny Pacific Northwest, so can't complain.
Yes. So good to see you. Today we are talking about email subject lines. So we've been doing this series on good email communication, kicking off the whole Finding Uno show on this important topic. Last week, we talked about the number one reason people open your emails. If you didn't listen to that, go back and listen to that first, because I think that's more fundamental to start with, and that is relationship. Your relationship with the sender, and particularly the history of that email relationship with that sender. But today we're talking about potentially the second most important reason that someone at least opens it. So after their relationship, they look at that from name and they say, okay, I trust this person. Okay, they usually send me really valuable things, but now they move their eyes over to the subject line. Potentially the second most important reason somebody else, what else do they have to go on at this point? But the subject line, to see what it's about, to see if it's something convincing enough for them to take their valuable time and open up.
Yeah, perfect. So we've got 9 tips and then a bonus question that I'll ask Matt at the end. So we'll run through the 9 things. We'll give our thoughts here. And so the first one here is shorter is better. Why is shorter better? All things being equal.
Yeah. So all else equal, shorter is generally better for almost all communication, right? So if you can get something said in a shorter amount of space than a longer one, that's better. Also, you'll think if you look through your inbox, and if you ever see a subject line that comes in that's like 1 word or 2 words, it really stands out because most of the subject lines in there are 5, 8, 14 words long. And so it really stands out a lot. So shorter is generally better. If you can get to the point quicker and say something meaningful, it can be really powerful.
Yeah, perfect. So number 2, what's the headline?
Yeah, so this is a great way to think about and as we go into these tips, I want to, we put this in the context of the number one reason people answer is that relationship. So as we go through these tips, these are not going to change your open rate in some huge way most of the time. They're going to shift it in the right direction, but more importantly are those fundamental things. I want to keep these in context because some of these are small things, some of them are more important than others. And some of these are just basic ways to think about your subject line in your email. And this one, when we think about this one, what's the headline? This is kind of how you can think about your subject line is like if you're looking at a front page of a newspaper, someone sees the headline, what's going to make them want to read the article? Okay. And this correlates with probably one of the biggest mistakes I see churches make using email subject lines. Matt, you could probably guess it. What do you see the most common subject line mistake?
Weekly news every single week, or daily newsletter or something like that with no other info.
Right. So it's just that same thing every week, and maybe it's the date. That's good. A date helps because that changes at least. You know which one is different than another one, but you're wasting that space. You could be saying something more meaningful. You could be giving them the headline. You could be getting across the description of what you're talking about and hopefully enticing them to read more. But you could also think about this. And again, remember the point of sending an email is not to get an open. So an open rate is not what you're tracking. So we can get off track sometimes because give me a tactic that gets the open rate to go up so I can feel better about myself. But really the purpose of the email is to do something else. Right. So you have to always keep that in mind. It's to get someone to take some action. It's to get them to click a link and join something or come to an event or for them to get a piece of information. So in some cases, maybe you can get that piece of information across in the subject line. So again, shorter is generally better, but if you can get across the meaning of what you need in that subject line and that headline, do it. So here's a good example. Instead of saying uh, movie night and just having that be the subject and nothing else, I got to check in. I don't know when it is. Sometimes I open it up. I'm like, oh, would have been good to know. I should have opened that a few days ago because it already passed. It was last night. And now I didn't know that because I didn't open it in time, right? So, but what if instead the subject line was movie night tonight at 7 p.m., parentheses, free pizza? Okay, so now you've gotten across all this valuable information in the subject line. And so they can click it open if they need more information, but they've got the meat of what it's about and whether it's relevant to them. Now, if they know they can't do anything tonight, they might not open it. No big deal. And so you might have a lower open rate because of that. Who cares? That's not the point to get an open rate. The point is you got the information to the people that needed it so they could join in if they could. So keep that in mind as you're writing these subject lines.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, number 3, don't be overly sensational.
Of course, everyone's seen this in their inboxes where something comes in that's like super important, all caps, please open now, 8 exclamation points. And they know that it doesn't work. It's a very spammy technique. And in some ways it can work, but it has a short life, right? It's like the boy who cried wolf. If you do that too many times, people start to realize that it's not really that urgent. You just really want me to read this, even though I really don't think it's that important. So the urgency of the subject needs to match the content, because if it's super urgent in the subject and then they read it and they go, well, that wasn't really that important. That could have waited till tomorrow when I had time to go through this more. But since I saw the urgent headline, I opened it now. But you wasted my time, or you were, it was in some ways inauthentic. It didn't match. It abused my trust. So don't be overly sensational. If something's really that important, you can do that, but just realize it has very limited life and that it's generally been abused as a tactic by spammers and other people. And so it's not going to work the same way it might otherwise work.
Yeah, perfect. So number 4 is free stuff. Like, here's 2 free tickets.
Yeah. I mean, everybody loves free stuff. So that's an easy one. If you have something inside that you're giving away, here's, like you said, subject line, here's 2 free tickets. Tickets to what? How much are they worth? What kind of thing is this? I don't want to miss out, right? So people don't want to miss out on free things. You could use that, but again, you want to use that sparingly as well, because that can get old too.
Yeah, I love that. And that maybe relates to the 5th one, be intriguing and have fun. I'm thinking, like, I went to a wedding once and they had, there were 2 drink tickets, quote unquote, but it was literally just 2 red strips of paper. Like, they could have, put 2 stamps on our hands or something and been less fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, those 2 maybe are related, but be intriguing and have fun.
Absolutely. So let some personality come through, make it interesting. You can be suspenseful. Sometimes if you have a lot of information to get across, it's not worth cramming it into the subject line. It's not going to work. It's going to be overkill, and it's not going to be an effective way to transmit the info. So use the subject line to, again, intrigue them, like the headline idea, to convince them to open it. And it could be related to the main content you want to say, but it could also just be something fun that goes along with it. So maybe it's your normal announcements for the week, which maybe they're just practical. They're not super exciting. Nothing somebody's going to like jump to in their inbox to hurry up and read. But you can help by having a little bit of fun. So what if instead your subject line was, and you thought Father Bob couldn't skateboard, ... Okay. So now you're going to pay that off in some way when you open it. Maybe there's a video of Father Bob trying to skateboard. I don't know. But is at least it's enticing people, getting them interested and going, oh, that's so much fun. And so and then they associate reading your email, which might be otherwise sometimes boring announcements, with something fun also. And so you're going to communicate those other things much more effectively, because number one, they're in a good mood. 2, they're opening it and reading it in the first place, and they're digging through, sort of looking for the payoff. But you can do that in so many different ways. So you've probably seen it used in your inbox. Get creative, be suspenseful. The ... works really well, but you can do it in lots of different ways.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, number 6 is ask a question.
Good. So some of these are some of these are all related to making it more interesting and being a little more creative. So in some ways, you just want to spice up your subject line, so it's not always the same, and just catches people off guard. Oh, I didn't expect that. Let me open that up. So throwing in a question every once in a while is really good. In some cases, it could be rhetorical, like, I'm going to answer this inside the email, and you might want to know the answer. So that ties into sort of being intriguing and suspenseful. But in other cases, it could be legitimate, like, I want to know what you think. So, and we've built into Flocknote great, easy ways to capture a ton of feedback all in one simple, organized place for you, for this reason, because it's important for churches to not just have a one-way communication, and to open that up to engagement and feedback. And so this is a great way, obviously, using the subject line to ask that question. And then within that, expanding on it, asking them a question, and sincerely asking them for them to reply. And so you get a different level of engagement, lots of ways to build good relationships with your members, but throw that into your subject line too, where you're asking that question.
Yeah, I always like to encourage people to be more open to asking a question, because the knee jerk reaction is, oh, somebody's just going to complain, because they always complain. Well, the reality is the people who are complaining are willing to go the distance to write the letter and mail it off to the editor, to the newspaper or whatever. But people who are, generally pretty happy, don't always think to just go and take the extra steps. So if you make it easy for them by asking them a question, letting them respond, by and large, it's going to be super positive.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many stories we have here where pastors finally have an ability to email. Texting is even a really powerful way to do this, that we built into Flocknote, where you send out a question and just ask for feedback, ask them for what they think of what was happening, which again, we're scared to, because we're afraid of criticism. Someone's going to criticize us. But I think you'll be so surprised. You'll get some criticism, but that will help you. That will help you improve. You want that. You don't want to hide from it. But you'll be surprised at how much more positive stuff you often get, and how encouraging it is in your ministry. So please, don't be scared to ask questions.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, number 7, last 3 here. Number 7 is get personal.
This is a good reminder as leaders, as we're building relationships. Email is just another way to build these relationships with people. Relationships between people are way more powerful than relationship between a person and an organization, people and a building, a name of a church, whatever. So when you're sending email, number one, that's some other tips for when you're sending email. Have it be from a person, not from an organization, when you can, at least the way you're writing it, write it personally. But do that in the subject line too, where you're bringing in your humanity, you're bringing in your personal relationship with the person. So it's a lot of times just the way of rephrasing the same sort of things. And you have to use this in a limited way as well. But maybe instead of just saying, here's 3 new things we're doing this year, and that's the subject line, 3 new things this year, you could say 3 ways I'm going to serve you better this year. So it's just a little spin on it, but it's personal now. And I actually want to open that more, because I'm getting a personal connection, a personal relationship. I'm getting a little piece of this person's heart that they've put into this ministry and why we're doing it. And that goes a long way. So don't be afraid to mix that in to the way that you're, crafting your subject lines and the emails in general.
Yeah, love that. Okay, number 8, social proof or credibility.
This is a fun one. So social proof is people want to be involved in things that other people are involved in. So if they have a sense that other people are doing it, I mean, in a sense, it's FOMO, it's fear of missing out. But in this sense, it's a good thing. It's missing out on something good that you're offering at your church or ministry. And so think about this example. Instead of subject line summer camp, you put the subject line 135 people just signed up for summer camp. Think about the difference in your brain that communicate, how differently that communicates summer camp versus 135 people just signed up for summer camp, and how much more likely you are to engage that email and go learn, why are 135 people signing up already? I'm missing out. I better go get my spot, right? So that psychology of people being involved, of people doing things, of putting it in motion. That's another way I think of it, is putting your subject line in motion. So you're using verbs, first of all, which is better writing, but making it personal, bringing in other people, bringing in the community, and putting that in motion is really powerful. It makes people more likely to want to engage it and open it.
Yeah, that's excellent. Okay, now the last one here is tell a story, number 9.
Yeah, this kind of caps off a lot of the recent tips that we just gave, but telling a story in general is a powerful way to connect with people. People think in stories, and that's why some of the best communication, the best teaching happens from stories. And so if you think about the way you communicate your ministry, whatever event you have going on, whatever announcement you have to make, is put it into the story. Put it into the story that you're telling instead of just giving the facts. And people engage it much differently. Here's one example. Instead of just saying, again, summer camp, let's say it's another summer camp promotion, but instead of just putting that boring subject line, you have, quote, the moment it all changed, unquote, Sam's story from summer camp last year. So you've brought them into a story about what's happened at summer camp, of real people, characters that went to summer camp that are maybe going again this year. So think about the arc of the story. We talked about the last one, putting it in motion. Now you're putting it into context of a story and telling that in the subject line. So again, instead of retreat info, maybe it's how we chose our retreat location. So it's bringing them into the thinking, into the reason, into the why of what you're doing, and telling the story of it. And it's much more interesting all of a sudden.
Yeah, those are great. So yeah, 9 tips. I have another question that we get relatively often, but I'm also it's kind of a bugaboo of mine that I'm always encouraging people to not care about quite as much. But then I'm also just kind of fascinated about, marketing stats and all that sort of thing in general. But what about putting a person's name in the subject line, or that like auto personalization just in general?
Yes. Yeah. So if you do any searching out there, like how to get better open rates, one of the common ones that will come up is using someone's name. So inserting their name, they call it personalizing it. Inserting someone's name, in this case, into a subject line, sometimes into the beginning of an email, that supposedly improves your response rates, your open rates, all those things. Here's the thought. So does it work? Yes and no. So number one, all those studies that you look at, they're all marketers that are figuring out how to communicate with strangers, like basically strangers, people that signed up on a list, or somehow they bought your contact info, or they signed up somewhere, but you don't really remember. You don't have that strong a relationship. In general, you're strangers. So marketing to strangers, talking to strangers, is totally different than talking to your church community. So be careful. Any of those stats that you read out there when it comes to marketing, you have to put them into the right context. So like, do people open emails more if they find their email? If they find their name, their first name in there? Yes. That's why the stats say that. But it's because most of the circumstances that's happening in is a marketing context where I see my name and I go, how did they get my name? Who is this? And I'm opening it more likely because I'm like, what is going on? Does your name stand out? Absolutely. That's why being personal with people and personal relationships are so powerful in ministry. When you say someone's name, when they see their name written, does it stand out? Does it jump off the page? Absolutely. We're wired for that. But here's the problem I have with it. The main problem is that we're kind of lying. Is that when you're sending a mass email to 1,000 people, but you're trying to pretend that it's personal when it's not actually a personal message, all it was a machine sticking someone's name in there, but it's not actually a personal message. To me, it feels like lying because I'm pretending to be something I'm not. I'm pretending I wrote you a personal message. So I go, oh, look, someone wrote my name. They sent me a personal message. But then I open it, and what is it? It's a message to everybody. And so it's not honest to me in that context. Now, there are some emails you get, even from machines and systems, that might have personalized information in the content. And in that case, absolutely. It's not lying. It's authentic to put their first name, because this says this information that's following is unique to you. It's personal for you. So absolutely, that works. But in this context where you're sending a message to everybody and then you pretend you're making it personal, to me is just a lie. And that goes back to that. That's not going to build an authentic relationship with somebody. If you want to build a good relationship with somebody, you don't get there by pretending to be something you're not. You get there by being authentic. And so the authentic route is not saying, dear Matt, when it's really to everybody. It's saying, hey, everybody. Right?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I love answering that question because it's an opportunity to talk about that specifically in the way we designed Flocknote. Intentionally, there's not a way to actually just put dear brackets first name, so it automatically feeds, not only to hopefully keep you from accidentally saying dear Matthew Warner, because both of your names are in your first name, but also just to be able to say instead dear everyone, because it's part of a group, you're part of a community. But there is the ability, like, if you're sending out tax letters within Flocknote, it's able to say, dear Warner household or something.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I always love answering that question because it's, again, it's just another little way to be intentional about the emails that we send.
Yeah. You told me before, you marked it when we were talking about this another day, that I think it's a wasted opportunity because, hey, everybody is better than dear friend. It's because it says I'm a part of this group. I'm a part of a community. And it's authentic, first of all, so it's better for that reason. But two, I think you're missing a chance to say we're doing something together. In some sense, it's that social proof I even mentioned in one of the tips. That's 135 people just signed up for summer camp. Mm-hmm. It's saying there's more to this than just you. You're a part of something bigger than yourself. And that's exciting. That's what people get excited about. And so we're kind of downplaying that in a way when we try to personalize it why? It doesn't make any sense.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Dear friend or dear parishioner is the worst, even worse than personalizing.
Yes, it is.
Right.
Just say, hey, everybody, it works great. Mm-hmm. But the one caveat I will say is there's other types of personalizing. So we're talking about here, just sticking someone's name into the subject line, right? But personalizing a subject line is great. The more you can personalize it, the better, but you also have to personalize who you're sending it to. So it has to match. So if you can, as an example, if there's a children's retreat yesterday, and I want to follow up today with a personalized list of all the parents of the children who attended yesterday, now I can send a more personal email to that group of parents because their children actually did attend yesterday. And I can say in the subject line, your children were adorable yesterday. Okay? So that's a more powerful subject line that's going to get them to open it. But I can't say that unless I've actually personalized the content and the group of people that I'm sending it to.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, yeah, for the sake of time, we have to cut it off there, unfortunately. But yeah, this is a great topic. I mean, it's one of those things you could plumb the depths for hours and just keep tinkering. We always encourage people to tinker with what works and what doesn't. So before we close it out, we're going to bounce over to our People Got Church Problems segment for a question from one of our listeners. All right, our question today comes from James. James asks, how can we better reach our infrequent, maybe disengaged parishioners? It sounds like he's asking. The diehard regulars are super easy to reach. However, the every other Sunday or once a month crowd, he put those in scare quotes, attendees are much more difficult to connect with.
All right, I'll try to keep this short. So first of all, the reason those disengaged people that are not already engaged with your communications are not engaging is probably because you haven't tapped in or communicated that transcendent third we talked about in an earlier episode, that mission, that deeper point, that thing that's bigger than both of you that you both care about. So you have to communicate that to them. Now, is your church doing something like that? Probably, but we don't do a good enough job of communicating it in a way that those people receive it. And that's my next sort of, I guess, bit of advice is that you're really talking about different groups of people. And so one of the biggest mistakes churches make is they say the same thing to everybody. When really, James recognized right here that there's more groups of people with different ideas, different levels of engagement. You have super engaged people, not so engaged, not engaged at all. And so you should be saying different things to different ones. If you're not saying different things to each group, don't be surprised if only one group, it resonates with one group, but not the other groups. You're not going to reach them. They're not going to be that interested. So think about that as you go through it, and think about an important thing to think about is your feedback loop. So most communicators at churches have a bit of a short-circuited feedback loop where all they hear from are the most engaged people that are already getting the message. And so those people say, hey, great job with that message. Or they say, hey, what was up with that? Why did you say it that way? I didn't like that. Or I didn't open that, or I didn't care about that. And so you change your behavior based on that small group, minority group, vocal minority group that does happen to give you feedback without even you asking potentially. And so you get really good at reaching that group and making them happy. But you got to break out of that cycle. Go ask some of those people why they're not engaged, and you'll get your answers. They'll be hard answers, but it's what you probably need to hear to then start solving that problem and say, okay, let's figure out how to say something that those people actually care about, or that they receive in a way that is meaningful to them. So it may be the same subjects, but saying it in a different way or at a different level that resonates with them more effectively. And those are some of the tools we've built into Flocknote, where you can segment your audiences based on engagement. So you can say, give me everybody who hasn't opened an email in 6 months. And I could reach out with them with a certain message that would be totally different than the message I would send to somebody who opens every email we send them, right? So you can start segmenting your messaging based on that, and you're going to get more effective at reaching each group.
Yeah, that's great. Well, hopefully that's helped, James. That's all the time we have for today. But before we bounce and close this episode of the Finding Uno Show, we're going to throw it over to our friend Liz to find out where Uno is today.
Thanks, Matt. This week, we found Uno with the folks at St. Joan of Arc Parish in Candler, North Carolina during their sign-up Sunday. And what a fantastic looking team they are. Thank you, team, for sharing this photo with us. We love seeing your pics with Uno, so if you find him, snap a photo and send it to us at howdy@findinguno.com, and we may feature you. For years, one of our most requested features for Flocknote has been the ability to send an image with a text message and the ability to send longer text messages. And we are so excited to announce that now you can do both with our newest feature, super texting. Like always, we would love it if you could leave us a review and like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you leave us a review, send us an email at howdy@findinguno.com to let us know, and we will send you a fancy pair of our Flock socks. Thanks for hanging out with us today. We'll see you next time on the Finding Uno Show.